In ancient Greece, where myths and legends intertwine with the very fabric of reality, the kingdom of Iolkos thrived by the sea. Its location was strategic, its access to trade routes unparalleled, and its potential for growth immense. The kingdom's harbor bustled with activity, a testament to its vibrant trade and maritime prowess. Ships from distant lands arrived daily, laden with exotic goods and eager merchants, all contributing to Iolkos's wealth and influence. Its people were industrious, skilled in crafts, and deeply connected to the sea. But within the grand palace walls, amidst the opulence and power, a tale of betrayal and simmering resentment began to unfold, threatening to unravel the kingdom's prosperity. The seeds of discord were sown, and the stage was set for a dramatic power struggle. Aeson, the gentle and just king, ruled Iolkos with a benevolent hand. He was known for his fairness, his compassion, and his unwavering commitment to the well-being of his people. He always sought to resolve conflicts peacefully and to govern with wisdom and understanding. Perhaps he possessed too much kindness for his own good, a trait that some perceived as a weakness in the ruthless world of ancient politics. His trusting nature made him vulnerable to those who sought to exploit his good intentions. His half-brother Peleus was his polar opposite, a stark contrast in character and ambition. Where Aeson was gentle, Peleus was stern. Where Aeson was just, Peleus was driven by self-interest. He was ambitious, relentlessly pursuing power and influence. He was cunning in his strategies and ruthless in his pursuit of his goals, willing to stop at nothing to achieve his desires. Peleus, consumed by envy, saw Aeson's compassion not as a virtue but as a weakness to be exploited. He believed that Aeson's kindness made him unfit to rule. He coveted the throne, believing that he, with his strength and ambition, was the rightful heir to the kingdom. The allure of power consumed him, driving him to contemplate treacherous acts. Driven by his insatiable ambition, Peleus secretly gathered loyal soldiers, men who were willing to follow his commands without question. He carefully cultivated their loyalty, promising them wealth and power in exchange for their unwavering support. And in a swift and decisive move he seized power, overthrowing his brother and usurping the throne. The palace was thrown into chaos as Peleus's soldiers stormed the royal chambers, taking control of the kingdom. Aeson, stripped of his crown and authority, was imprisoned within his own palace, a prisoner in the very halls where he had once ruled with grace and wisdom. His reign of kindness had come to an abrupt and tragic end. The people of Iolkos whispered of the injustice that had befallen their king, their hearts heavy with sorrow and fear. They mourned the loss of Aeson's gentle rule and the rise of Peleus's iron fist. But fear silenced their voices, preventing them from openly challenging Peleus's authority. The threat of retribution hung heavy in the air, stifling any potential dissent. Under Peleus's rule, Iolkos outwardly remained wealthy, its coffers filled with the spoils of trade and conquest. The city's markets continued to thrive and its merchants prospered. But beneath the surface of prosperity, the spirit of the kingdom began to fade, replaced by a sense of unease and oppression. The joy and laughter that had once filled the streets were now replaced by hushed whispers and fearful glances. Suspicion and dread permeated the atmosphere, poisoning the hearts and minds of the people. Trust eroded as neighbors turned against neighbors, fearing betrayal and denunciation. Peleus, consumed by paranoia, ruled with an iron fist, his every action driven by suspicion and fear. He saw enemies lurking in every shadow, plotting to overthrow him and restore Aeson to the throne. He saw threats everywhere, real or imagined, and responded with swift and brutal force. His reign was marked by oppression, injustice, and the constant fear of reprisal. The once bright and vibrant city of Iolkos, a beacon of hope and prosperity, grew cold and dark under his iron grip, its spirit crushed by his tyranny. The light of hope had been extinguished, replaced by the darkness of despair. The kingdom's peace was shattered, its harmony disrupted by Peleus's ambition and cruelty. The bonds that had once united the people were now frayed and broken, and its true king, the rightful ruler of Iolkos, was lost to the shadows, his fate uncertain, his future hanging in the balance. The kingdom yearned for his return, for the restoration of justice and peace. Iolkos remained prosperous on the surface, its wealth masking the deep-seated discontent that simmered beneath. But it was ruled by fear, not love, its people living in constant apprehension of Peleus's wrath. The kingdom had become a shadow of its former self, its spirit broken and its hope diminished. The people waited, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and hope, hoping for a day when justice would return to Iolkos, when Aeson would be restored to his rightful place, and when peace and prosperity would once again reign. They clung to the belief that even in the darkest of times, hope could still prevail. And so, amidst the turmoil and oppression, the seeds of a hero's journey were sown, a journey that would ultimately determine the fate of Iolcos and its people. The stage was set for a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the triumph of good over evil. Before his imprisonment, Aeson had a son, Jason. Fearing for his life, Aeson and Alcimede faked Jason's death, mourning publicly to deceive Peleus. In secret, they smuggled their infant son out of Iolcos, entrusting him to the wise centaur Chiron on Mount Pelion. Chiron, famed teacher of heroes, became Jason's guardian. Jason's parents sacrificed everything, hoping he would one day reclaim his birthright. Hidden in the wild, Jason was raised far from the reach of the usurper. The hope of Iolcos rested on a child in exile. The future of the kingdom depended on the boy's survival. On Mount Pelion, Jason's life began anew under Chiron's guidance. Chiron taught him to hunt, track, and survive, but also to value justice, honor, and compassion. Jason learned music, the wisdom of the stars, and the stories of heroes. He grew strong in body and mind, shaped by the wild and by Chiron's wisdom. Years passed, Jason became a skilled, noble young man, unaware of his royal heritage. But Chiron knew Jason's destiny lay beyond the mountains. When Jason turned 20, Chiron revealed the truth. His father was the rightful king and his uncle the usurper. The revelation ignited a fire in Jason's heart. He was ready to reclaim his birthright. The time for hiding was over. With Chiron's blessing, Jason, now a young man hardened by training and driven by purpose, began his journey to Iolcos. He carried with him not only the hopes of his upbringing, but also the weight of a destiny yet unknown. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, both seen and unseen, but his resolve remained unshaken. On the way, as fate would have it, he encountered an old woman struggling to cross a raging river. The waters were high and turbulent, threatening to sweep her away. Without hesitation, Jason offered his assistance, his strength and compassion evident in his every move. In his valiant effort to ensure her safety, he lost a sandal to the unforgiving current, unaware that the seemingly frail old woman was in fact the goddess Hera in disguise, testing his character and paving the way for his future trials. This act of kindness, though small, would have significant repercussions. After days of travel, Jason finally arrived in Iolcos, the city of his birthright and the seat of his uncle's ill-gotten throne. The city loomed before him, a mix of grandeur and foreboding. He entered its gates a striking figure, weathered by his journey and distinguished by the peculiar absence of one sandal, a visible mark of his recent encounter. His unusual appearance immediately drew curious stares from the townsfolk, who paused in their daily routines to observe the newcomer. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they speculated about his identity and purpose. Unbeknownst to Jason, the city was gathered for a grand ceremony led by King Peleus, his uncle, a man known for his ruthlessness and ambition. The air was thick with anticipation and the scent of incense. Jason's unexpected presence disrupted the solemnity of the event. His arrival was an unscripted intrusion into Peleus's carefully orchestrated display of power. Whispers spread like wildfire through the assembled crowd, each voice adding to the growing intrigue surrounding the mysterious stranger with the missing sandal. His wild strength, evident in his posture and the set of his jaw, and his unwavering confidence unsettled the crowd, stirring a sense of unease and anticipation. They sensed that this was no ordinary traveler. The people, their eyes darting nervously, noticed his missing sandal, a seemingly insignificant detail. But it was a detail that would soon prove fateful, a sign foretold in ancient prophecies, casting a long shadow over the city. Jason stood tall amidst the sea of faces, his gaze fixed on the king, completely unaware of the ancient prophecy he was about to fulfill, a prophecy that spoke of a man with one sandal who would challenge the king's reign. The city's attention, once solely focused on the king and his ceremony, now irrevocably shifted from the king to the newcomer, drawn by an invisible force. The stage was set, the players in place, and the air crackled with anticipation as destiny prepared to unfold its intricate and unpredictable plan. All eyes, filled with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and hope, were now fixed on the one-sandaled stranger, the man who had unknowingly walked into the heart of a prophecy. King Peleus saw Jason and froze in terror. Years ago, the Oracle of Delphi had warned him, "Beware the man with one sandal." Peleus recognized the prophecy in Jason's appearance. Panic gripped the king. The threat he'd feared for decades had arrived. The crowd sensed his fear, curiosity turning to excitement. The ceremony was forgotten. All eyes were on Peleus and the stranger. The prophecy had come to life. The fate of Iolcos hung in the balance. Jason stood firm and declared his identity. "I am Jason, son of Aeson, rightful heir to Iolcos." The crowd gasped, realizing their lost prince had returned. Peleus was stunned. His nephew, thought dead, now stood before him. Jason's claim was undeniable. The prophecy was fulfilled. With calm authority, Jason demanded the throne and his father's freedom. He called for justice, not violence. The people remembered gentler times and saw hope in Jason. Peleus's fear was visible. His power wavered. Jason's boldness inspired the crowd. The kingdom's future was suddenly uncertain. Jason stood as a symbol of justice, demanding what was rightfully his. The people waited for Peleus's response. The balance of power had shifted. The return of the true heir could not be ignored. Before Peleus could answer, an old man pushed through the crowd. It was Aeson, freed by sympathetic guards. Father and son embraced for the first time, tears of joy and relief flowing. The people cheered, their hope rekindled by the reunion. Friends and loyalists rallied to Jason's side, pledging support. Peleus's authority crumbled as the crowd celebrated the return of their prince. The family's reunion became a rallying point for the kingdom. Jason now had the people and his father behind him. The usurper stood alone, his power slipping away. Trapped, Peleus masked his fear with false warmth. He addressed the crowd, pretending to welcome Jason's return and offering the throne, on one condition. Peleus claimed Iolcos was cursed and only the golden fleece could lift it. He challenged Jason to retrieve the fleece from distant Colchis, promising the crown upon his return. The task was perilous, meant to rid Peleus of his rival. The crowd murmured, unsure if the king's offer was genuine. Jason sensed the trap but listened. The challenge was set, a quest that would test Jason's worth. Refusing would mean cowardice. Accepting meant risking everything. Peleus's cunning had bought him time. The fate of Iolcos now rested on Jason's answer. Jason, though young, was not naive. He saw through Peleus's treacherous scheme, recognizing it for what it was, a thinly veiled attempt to remove him from the line of succession, a dangerous mission designed to ensure he would never return to claim his birthright. But despite the obvious danger and the king's deceit, the people's hope rested on his shoulders, leaving him no choice but to consider the challenge. They yearned for a leader, someone to restore prosperity and justice to Iolcos. To refuse would be to fail them, to crush their spirits and condemn them to further oppression under Peleus's rule. The weight of their expectations pressed heavily upon him. To accept, however, was to embrace his destiny, to step into the role he was born to play, regardless of the risks. It was a gamble, a perilous journey with an uncertain outcome, but one he couldn't ignore. After a moment of profound contemplation, Jason accepted the challenge, his voice ringing with newfound resolve. He knew the dangers that lay ahead, the mythical beasts and treacherous landscapes he would have to face, but his determination outweighed his fear. He vowed before the assembled crowd to bring back the golden fleece, a symbol of power and prosperity, a treasure guarded by formidable forces in the distant land of Colchis. And with the fleece in hand he would return to free Iolcos from Peleus's tyrannical grip, restoring the kingdom to its former glory and ushering in an era of peace and justice. The crowd erupted in cheers, a wave of hope washing over them as they witnessed Jason's courage and commitment. Their faith in him was absolute, their belief that he could overcome any obstacle unwavering. They were seeing a hero ready to risk all for their future, a beacon of light in the darkness of Peleus's reign. His willingness to sacrifice everything for their sake ignited a spark of rebellion in their hearts. Jason's words sealed his fate. He was now bound by honor and duty to fulfill his promise, to face whatever challenges lay ahead with unwavering resolve. "I will not fail," he declared, his voice echoing with conviction. "I will return with the golden fleece, or I will die trying. And when I return," he continued, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon, "I will claim my throne, and I will rule Iolcos with justice and compassion." With those words, the quest for the golden fleece had begun, a journey that would test Jason's courage, strength and leadership like never before. Jason knew he couldn't undertake this perilous quest alone. He called for heroes from across Greece to join him, warriors renowned for their strength, skill, and bravery. He would need a ship, a vessel strong enough to withstand the treacherous seas and the mythical creatures that guarded the path to Colchis. And he would need a crew of champions, the bravest and most skilled warriors in all of Greece, men who were willing to risk their lives for the glory of the quest and the freedom of Iolcos. And so, The adventure of Jason and the Argonauts was set in motion, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope. All because of a king's fear, a desperate attempt to cling to power, and a young hero's courage, a willingness to challenge the status quo and fight for what was right. The legend was about to unfold, a story that would be told and retold for generations to come, inspiring countless others to pursue their dreams and fight for what they believe in. The journey to reclaim Iolcos and a place in history had truly begun, a voyage into the unknown, fraught with peril but filled with the promise of glory. The world would soon know the name of Jason, the hero who dared to challenge the gods and men, the leader who inspired a generation, the legend that would live forever.